Offline, and off we go. There we are. Welcome again to Pondering. My computer is annoying me right now, but that's okay. Welcome to Pondering, the program where weekly we ponder all things, and then we talk about them. We talk about money, politics, religion, sex, child rearing, finances, whatever it is. You name it, but we do it. And this is what makes us unique. I guess there are two things that make us unique. One is we do it from an unabashedly, unashamedly, unapologetically Christian perspective. We don't require that of our audience, of course. You can come at it from any perspective. You can disagree, just don't be disagreeable. That's what we say. But as for your host and many of our audience members, we are Christians and we believe, weirdly enough, that we should let our biblical worldview and our understanding of the truth revealed by God dictate all that we think, say, see, or do. When we hear something, we look at it or listen to it through the filter of the Word of God. And we talk about it from that perspective, and therefore no holds barred, because we think that we shouldn't compartmentalize our life and have a little spiritual life over here, a political life over there, a sex life or family life over here. No. It's all integrated because we are unified as people. We're one person, one body, as Paul wrote, and we should be looking at things through what God has given us and revealed. So we ponder from that Christian perspective, and we talk about it every Saturday morning, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today we're going to cut it a little short because I have a funeral, which is why I'm sort of dressed up, not completely yet, but I have to leave to go do a funeral way up north, so I'll have to cut a little short today, but we do that, and then we post things through the week. You're always welcome to post on the Pondering page. You can contribute right here in the live stream on Facebook, the Pondering Radio page of Facebook. You can post things after the fact, after we're off the air, at the Pondering Radio page on Facebook. You can also call 860-500-7163. to leave a message, post a thought, an idea there, via voicemail, again, 860-500-7163, or you can email us at ponderingradio@gmail.com. That's ponderingradio, like one word, at gmail.com. And we are always glad and thrilled and excited and honored that you would join us and participate in any of those venues. Again, via podcast, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spreaker, you name it, you can get our link and download and listen to it on demand. Share it with your friends, family, neighbors, complete strangers, and 5-star rate us if you would, because it helps us get more exposure. We're interested in that because we want to see the truth set people free. Let's see who we got with us this morning. Susie says, good morning. Good morning, Susie. Good morning, Pastor Roger. Good morning, Jerry, out there in beautiful, sunny Southern California. He says, good morning, PJ and fellow ponderers, pondering the ponderable issues of the day. Jerry, you're pretty creative, man. You should be a writer or something. It's great to have all of you guys aboard, and we do have listeners from sea to shining sea. We even have listeners overseas. We've done some demographics with a couple of our podcast venues, and we've had listeners in Asia, Europe, all over. So welcome. Great to have you no matter where you come from. I'll tell you what I want to do today. And if you're not into the politics or you're sick of the news, I hope you won't bail on me here, because I do think it's important to review some facts and timeline with regard to this whole impeachment insanity with regard to our president, or the impeachment hearings that are taking place with regard to the president, and whether or not the House of Representatives will have a formal vote of impeachment. I think the facts that have come out are astounding, meaning they point to a crazy, insane, angry, hateful conspiracy. I don't know what else to call it. It sounds weird, and probably you think I should be wearing a tinfoil hat if you've been listening to the mainstream media, because you'll think, what are you talking about? But I think we should go through just a quick timeline on that. And here's the reason I think you should stick with it, even if you're sick of it and you don't like politics or whatever. In life, the Bible says this, that he that answers a matter before he hears it is a fool, right? That's pretty indicting, isn't it? I mean, nobody wants to be a fool. The Bible talks about the fool and his folly, and talks about don't answer a fool in his folly lest you be like him. The Bible's pretty has a lot to say about fools and foolishness, especially in the book of Proverbs. And this is one of those examples where we can learn and say, hey, I don't want to do that. Whether I'm hearing an accusation between my kids, one kid against the other kid, whether I'm listening to gossip at church, which I shouldn't be listening, I should be pointing to Matthew 18:15-19 and telling them to go to the person they're upset with, but we'll put that aside for a moment. You've heard it now. They've shared it with you, whether you wanted it or not. It's in your head. How do you handle that? What do you do? Many times it's easy for us to see what's presented on the surface and jump to a conclusion. And when we jump to a conclusion, we ought to look at how far down it is to the bottom because we may not survive that jump. In other words, I think it always warrants us, no matter what the issue, political, relational, financial. We hear a pitch on the phone. We had a case recently, my family and I, my wife and I, we were looking at possible refinance of our mortgage. We hope to retire in a few years, and we thought, well, if we refi, we can put more money away, right? And we got this wonderful presentation from the loan representative, the salesperson, and all this was going to be great. And they were going to save us, X amount of money a month and, etc. But I pushed back because they didn't want to put anything in writing. They just wanted to talk about it. My wife's really busy, so she doesn't have time to listen to a pitch. So I said, put down a summary in writing so I can sit and talk with her, and then we'll go from there. Well, finally, when I told them we weren't moving until we got that, we got this little summary in the email. And interestingly enough, in the summary, we found that their closing costs were such that it would take us 7.5 years to pay off the closing costs based on the savings we were going to have in our monthly payment. But we want to sell in about 4.5 years, potentially. We're thinking about it. So we would still be in the hole paying back the refi fees by the time we sold the house. So it makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, it'd be stupid to do it. Even though the monthly payment's lower, the interest rate's lower, we would, in 3.5, 4 years, we'd still be paying, in terms of those savings, we'd still be in the red based on the closing costs. So forget it, right? Well, it always behooves us to get the facts. It always is worthwhile to take a look, right? A little deeper, to think things through, as we say on this show all the time. So I want to walk through a quick timeline of this latest impeachment, the latest impeachment attempt. There'll be more, and there have been already some, but this one with regard to the Ukraine, because it's astounding. And it is I think, a life lesson in get the facts, right? Go deeper. Don't answer the matter before you hear the whole thing, right? Look underneath the surface. Open the hood. Pastor Rogers says, politics today, Proverbs 18:2. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. Oh, amen, brother. That is exactly what we're seeing on CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS. You name it, they are all spewing opinions because they hate our president. And look, you don't have to like him, but we still need to operate within the law and within reason. We have to think and not just do or say whatever comes to our mind. That's a great verse. Brenda, good morning to you too, my dear. So, quick timeline. What's actually happened? Now, what I'm about to do, just off the top of my head, is just give you a timeline based on facts. This is stuff we know. This is out there. It's public. You can Google it if you doubt me. I'm not making up anything. I'm not giving you an opinion. I'm just going to walk through a timeline of things that have happened that we absolutely know happened, and then ask you to draw a conclusion. And I pretty much can guarantee it'll be a different conclusion than what you're hearing on the news or out of the mouths of the progressive liberal Democrats in the Congress, and even some of the Republicans who are liberals. So back early this year, last spring, I believe it was, Attorney General Barr is appointed by the president, and he says, at first a little guardedly, but eventually comes out pretty clear, he's going after the people that have created this whole Russian conspiracy hoax. The Mueller report showed there was no collusion, no obstruction, and Attorney General Barr says, something smells funny here. Who put this together? How? When? There's some pieces that don't add up. Were obviously laws broken. We know that for a fact. So he's going to look into it. So he goes and he travels. He's been to Australia. He and his agents, his investigators, have been to Australia. They've been to England. They've been to the Ukraine. They've been to Russia. They've been all over. And they're looking and they're digging and they're asking questions and they're doing private interviews. And I believe people in the Congress who are involved in the Russian conspiracy thing are very nervous. All right, in that context, as that's going on, the president has a conversation on the phone with the president of Ukraine in July. And I've heard the entire transcript of that phone call. Good morning, Fred. And you should, if you can get it, you can Google it, you can download it. It is completely different than what you're hearing on the news. Excuse me. So, President has a conversation, obviously knowing that there's this investigation going on by Attorney General Barr, he's investigating the investigators who had been involved in the Russian collusion hoax. And I call it a hoax because I think if you look at that, you'll conclude the same thing. But let's put that aside. We'll just say Russian collusion thing. So this is an ongoing investigation. The president of Ukraine on the phone says, well, Mr. President, we thank you so much for everything. And he's being very polite and very kind and wonderful. And he says, we want to stop corruption at all levels in our country, in any other country, anything that our people or others have had to do with it. We want to do everything we can to stand against it. And they chat a little bit, and the president says, well, good, I want you to do me a favor. Now, you've heard that quoted. The president said, I want you to do me a favor. And then you've heard that he asked to have his political opponent, Joe Biden, looked into. Now, he does ask that, but much later in the conversation. Read the transcript. The favor he asked for was for the Ukrainians to look into this, what would you call them? I guess an IT firm in the Ukraine that the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, had hired to look at the servers that were hacked during the 2016 campaign. You may remember the story. Hillary couldn't find her emails. Oh, gosh, thousands of emails just vanished, poof, overnight. But don't worry, she said, no big deal. Those emails are just, they have to do with my daughter's wedding and hair appointments and nothing to see here. But I don't know, they're gone. And So later, the DNC computer was hacked, and it was shown that she did have classified emails on her server, which is illegal. Others have been jailed for that, by the way. And that came out, and she believes, and others, she may be right, that this affected the outcome of the election. Now, the president, at the time, candidate Trump, had joked, and I remember him saying it, I remember he was joking. He said, well, they can't find those emails. What do you know? Well, maybe they should ask the Russians to find them, right? And because, they say the Russians are hacking us, maybe the Russians can find the emails, because the Russians had attempted to hack the DNC computer and Hillary's server. Well, I don't know if they had at that point or if anybody knew that or not, but the president said, well, they should find them. They're good at finding this stuff. Well, that planted the seed of an accusation of collusion with the Russians right there. And he was joking around, and unfortunately you can't joke with these people because they'll try to tear you up with it, apparently. So anyway, I digress. So this company was hired by the DNC to look at the servers. They didn't use our own intelligence people. They didn't even let the CIA or NSA or anybody else see the server. They sent it to this firm, and I guess they're based in the Ukraine. So they come back and conclude, nope, it was the Russians. They definitely did it, and that settles it. They're guilty, which fit the narrative well that the president was colluding with the Russians and the Russians did the hacking, and off we go to the races. And you know the rest of that story, or at least parts of it. Well, the president, in his conversation in July with the president of Ukraine, says, you should look at that firm. Now, why did he say that? Because apparently, well, I don't think it's apparent anymore. I think it's obvious. The Attorney General Barr and his people had uncovered some questionable information about that firm and about this whole hacking thing. And they're not so sure it was the Russians. In fact, they, I believe, would say that it's probably not the Russians who hacked. The firm in the Ukraine, the owner, the CEO, has a hate relationship. He absolutely detests and has an ongoing feud with Vladimir Putin. Conveniently left out of any narratives prior to this. So for him to come back and say, yeah, the Russians did it, they're evil, not a surprise. Now, did they or didn't they? We don't know. But the reality is they had a bias against the Russians that should have been looked at. And they probably shouldn't have had that job. We should have kept it internal, have our own IT people look at it. But we didn't. So obviously the president, Attorney General Barr, and others are looking at that closely, and he asked the Ukrainian president for help to look at that as part of, again, getting to the bottom of this corruption and this attempted coup that's been going on. Well, later in the conversation, as they chat some more about other things, nowhere is aid mentioned, nowhere is money mentioned, nowhere does the president say you aren't going to get that aid package we promised unless you do this, that. That never said. The Democrats saying it was implied, like the Godfather, do me a favor. But never said. In fact, we paid that money later, with or without an investigation into Joe Biden, apparently. We did pay it. But he does say later in the conversation, and excuse me, if you want to get rid of corruption, you should look at this whole thing with Joe Biden and his son. Because, he's got $50,000 a month from this financial firm with no experience in finance whatsoever. He's a recovering drug addict. He had no credentials as Joe Biden's vice president, and he's working with Ukrainians. Suddenly, this firm hires what's his name? Biden, just lost his name, his son, to be on the board and get paid, $50,000 a month. You should look at that, the president says. Now, did he say it because Joe Biden's running against him potentially as the nominee in the Democratic side? We don't know. Only God knows his heart. I doubt it, and the reason I doubt it is because he's never seen Joe Biden as a formidable opponent. Joe Biden is sliding in the polls, and Elizabeth Warren is climbing. She'll probably be the nominee. I don't think the president really had a need to go after Joe Biden at this point that way. But they are in the context of corruption, and the president has a constitutional mandate to request help anywhere he wants, including foreign leaders, when corruption has occurred that affects our country. So whether or not he had that ulterior motive, fact is, legally, he is supposed to ask those kind of questions. Now, when you look a little deeper under those covers, you find that, Hunter, there is his name. I knew his name was Hunter. Hunter Biden was, again, a drug addict, had no credentials in finance, suddenly gets this job while his dad is vice president of the United States to sit on a board. I don't think there was much, if anything, he had to do, and he collects $50,000 a month. Sweet deal, man. I mean, maybe he just fell into it. Maybe the vice president had nothing to do with it. I'd love to fall into a deal like that, but apparently maybe he did. Okay. But then, these are all facts. This is not speculation. The firm comes under scrutiny for some kind of, weird either tax evasion or some kind of financial mismanagement by the Attorney General, a different title, but basically the Attorney General of the Ukraine. And while that investigation is going on, Joe Biden, and again, he's admitted this publicly. It's come out. I've heard the audio of him saying it. Threatens the president of Ukraine and says, listen, we're not giving you $3 billion in military aid or whatever it was unless you fire this guy. Now, he says now that, that guy was corrupt and other nations saw he was corrupt, and that's why we're trying to get rid of him, and we leveraged money against him to get him to do it. Well, okay. Fast forward, by the way, just as an aside, if our president thought there was corruption going on in the Ukraine and thought that, Biden and this other firm that was used by the DNC to create the Russian or help create the Russian conspiracy theory was wrong, evil, illegal, whatever, he had the right to say, I'm not giving you aid until you fix this mess. Just as Joe Biden apparently said, as he claims now to have said to the Ukrainian president, our president today has the same right to say the same thing. We're not giving you aid unless you fix this corruption. Joe Biden, ironically or not, says that was his rationale back then. Had nothing to do with his son. No, nothing to see here. But we think this attorney general is corrupt, and others think he's corrupt, so we're not giving him money until he gets rid of him, and he got rid of him. Look at me. I'm the man. And he's bragged about it, and I've heard the tapes. Absolutely clearly, that's what he says happened. Now, coincidence that his son got a job with that same firm making $50,000 a month? Coincidence that while they're under investigation, the vice president says you're not getting any money, and President Obama approves this, by the way, approved it, until you fire the guy who just happens to be investigating the firm that's giving my son $50,000 a month. If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, all right. But maybe it's just coincidence, possibly. Okay. But the president's saying, hey, look into that. Because it doesn't smell right. In the context of this entire investigation, they're looking at that again and saying, something's going on here. There's collusion, but it's not the president. It's not President Trump. There's some other collusion that's been going on. That's what happened. Now, after that conversation occurs in July, another coincidence occurred in August. Ready? Are you ready for this? This is amazing coinkydink. In August, and I believe it started in the Intelligence Committee in the House, but maybe not, but there's a change made to the whistleblower law. Oh, just amazing coincidence. And now the whistleblower law allows for people who were not eyewitnesses to come forward and blow the whistle on top government officials. Well, why would that change happen? Well, I don't know, but it's also interesting that the same month, or maybe early September, this whistleblower comes forward who never heard the conversation with the president of Ukraine. He heard it from someone else who heard it from someone else, or parts of it. And he writes this very well-worded, a very interesting, almost legal document, supposedly on his own, although it's come out that he actually had contact with Schiff, I think, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, and others, even though Schiff said he never did. They claim they never had talked to him, and then they had to admit they did. He has this wonderfully worded document about the conversation that he didn't hear, which changes the tone of the conversation to make it basically sound like the president said, hey, Mr. Ukraine, you either investigate Joe Biden because he's running against me in the election, I want to get rid of him, or I'm not giving you money. Never happened. I heard it, the entire thing. You can get it and read it yourself. That did not happen. But that's what his third-hand or second-hand conversation or report says, and he's allowed to bring it forward because the law has just changed. Wow, what a miracle, interestingly enough, to allow for third parties who haven't actually witnessed the corruption or sin or whatever to bring forth a whistleblower complaint. All right, so then the whistleblower comes forward, and it comes out that he's heard that this conversation occurred, and the president's corrupt, and he's trying to use hold money over the head of the president of Ukraine to destroy his political opponents. And now there's a big investigation in the House, and there's all this, they're going to impeach this guy, and he needs to go. And when the chairman of the Intelligence Committee introduces the hearings, he words or creates this statement, supposedly from the president's conversation, that basically goes like this. Hey, if you want money from us, you need to investigate my opponents because I don't want to lose this election. And he gives this opening statement, like basically I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much it. It's not in the whistleblower's report, and it's not in the original transcript of the phone call at all. And when he's called on it, he says, I was just paraphrasing. I was just giving a parody. But that clip of him saying it has been all over the news, MSNBC, CNN, of course CNN. And people on the street think, oh, wow, the president sounds like the Godfather. Guys, I've heard the transcript. You can read the transcript. Never said. You could say it was implied or hinted at, I suppose, if you wanted to, but it was never said. So my point in all this, get the facts. Look beneath the surface. Do not just listen to the clips. And we always say this on the show, whether you're talking about the media and some big scandal or whether you're talking about people in your life, accusations one against the other, circumstances, etc., imputed motives. Be careful. He that answers a matter before he hears it, the Bible says, is a fool. And, foolishness leads to destruction. And not just of a president, but in this case, it could be of an entire nation, a way of life. And our family, it could be a relationship, a marriage, a parenting connection with our kids. I remember years ago, Roger says, Schiff is shifty. I gotta, before I tell you that story, I gotta read a couple more of your comments. Roger says, I heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend who heard it from another. You've been messing around. Yeah, exactly. That song is apropos. Yeah, Hunter Biden. Roger says, it's not about getting to the truth. It's about, oops, I got caught. Pay no attention to the person behind the curtain. Yes. Roger says, libs have no sense of humor. Can't joke around because they don't get it. Yeah, unfortunately, that's all true, Roger. Anyway, many years ago, when my son was little, and I don't even know how old he was. I'm going to say maybe, 4 or 5. He wasn't very old. We were living in New Jersey, and I had just bought a new Bible and tabs for the Bible to find, how you can attach those little tabs to the end of the pages here so you can find the books quicker without thumbing through. And I was going to put those on. I hadn't had time to put them on. I think I might have started, but I hadn't finished. And I told everybody, my son, my wife, everybody that come in the house, please don't touch the tabs. I told David, do not touch those tabs. Those are Daddy's. I don't want that messed up. Well, I came back and I couldn't find them. And I was looking everywhere, and I was upset. And I was like, I just told you, don't touch those, And I brought him in. I said to him, I need to, where are the tabs? I don't know, Daddy. I didn't touch them. I told you not to touch those tabs. No, I didn't touch those tabs, Dad. And I kept going at him and going at him and going at him. And I might have even given him a little swat in the butt. I can't remember. I might have. I can't remember for sure. Because I was convinced, absolutely convinced, he had done exactly what I told him not to do. And I was heated. I was trying to stay calm and all that stuff, but I was upset. Well, he cried, told him I loved him anyway, but he better find those and blah, blah, blah. Let him go. And about 10 minutes later, guess what? I found the tabs. Right where I had left them. In a drawer or something. They weren't in my Bible. And I had to go in tears and apologize to my son and ask for his forgiveness. Because I didn't get the facts. I looked at the circumstances. I knew he would grab stuff. I knew he was impulsive. I knew he was often obstinate, would do the opposite of what we told him. Okay. I knew I'd put the tabs in a certain spot, and for a while I had them right in my Bible. True, but then I had moved them, forgot. But based on the circumstances, he was guilty, man. I was going to nail him. He's not going to get away with this. And as it turned out, he was innocent. And I had to go in tears and ask for forgiveness. He then answers a matter before he hears it. Is a fool. Don't be a fool. When it comes to all this stuff, realize that the media has bias. Obviously, the Democrats have bias. The reason they're biased is they hate the policies of our president more than they hate his tweets or his rough, gruff nature. We can go through that another time. But we need to make sure we, as God's people, make decisions based on the biblical mandate of hearing a matter, of looking at the details, of understanding the truth, and the truth will set us free before we spout off or vote off somebody or against something. All right, well, Roger says goodbye, and I unfortunately have to say goodbye today, too. I know this is a short version of Pondering. Would love to hear your thoughts, your comments, right here on the Pondering Radio page of Facebook, or via telephone, as I said earlier, 860-500-7163, or at our email address, ponderingradio@gmail.com. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell complete strangers to join us Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. right here on the Pondering Show, or via anywhere you get podcasts. Basically, you can find us, download, listen, and you can make your comments here on the Pondering Radio Facebook page. God bless you guys, as we always say. In the meantime, till next time, stay in the Word, keep praying, and do not check your brains at the door. Think things through. Keep on pondering. God bless you guys. Bye for now.